I've opened up some spots this year for new projects. So if you are looking for help with any of your apps or any of your work in the Swift and Apple space in 2024, you definitely want to get a hold of me, Leo at brightdigit.com. I do work in iOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, Vision Pro, server side, whatever it is. I would love to help you and your team. I have 10 years of experience. And if you have been following this podcast, you know I'm pretty good at explaining and talking about stuff and communicating with your team. So I want to help you out. What can I do? What can I do to help you with your Swift UI issues, your weird core data problems, or you just need an extra helping hand? Definitely reach out to me, Leo at brightdigit.com. We'd love to help you. You can also reach out to me on social media as well. Feel free to DM me and let me know how can we help you and your team with whatever app projects you have coming down the pipeline. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast and watching my YouTube videos. I'm really excited for 2024. If you want to continue to stay up to date, I highly recommend following me on social media and also signing up for the newsletter. We have a new article coming out on dependencies that we're going to be sharing in our newsletter that I highly think it's going to be fantastic and super helpful if you're having issues with dependencies and testing. The newsletter is located at brightdigit.com/newsletter. Sign up there to get the latest issues as they come out. And then if you really want to stay on top of everything, we have our brand new Patreon, patreon.com/brightdigit, where you can get early access to episodes, articles, all sorts of stuff that I'm working on, see how things are going with Bushel or whatever apps I'm working on right from there. So sign up for the Patreon to get early access. It's definitely worth it. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Bye. Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Today, I'm joined by Kris Slazinski. Kris, thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm super excited today to talk about, follow up on our last episode with Martin on Build in Public and user experience, which I don't think we've ever really talked about, and ChatGPT and stuff. You have a few apps out. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, okay. So my name is my Polish name is Krzysiek, but in English I use Kris. So I come from Poland, but now I live in Thailand since 6 years.
Oh, wow,
Um,
cool.
yeah, and I'm mostly an artist, more than a developer. Like I have a master's degree in art.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
my
awesome.
my my major was painting, and my minor was graphic design. So at least something related to building apps a little, right? Designing. And later, after I graduated, I started my own business immediately after graduation. And I was working as a graphic designer first and designing websites and logos and things for print. And later, a few years later, because it was around 2012, so now it's almost 12 years, I started to work as a UX designer.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and few years ago, when I was working as a UX designer, it was it was very cool for me, this thought that like it would be nice to build my own apps, not just design them but actually work on them, develop them, and have my own product. But I started first, there wasn't a Swift UI in the world, so I tried UI Kit, and it just wasn't easy enough for me to
Yeah.
start with development. Yeah,
Yeah.
and later,
I can imagine
when
that.
Mhm. So when Apple introduced Swift UI, I tried again, and few months later, after they released Swift UI, I started to work on my first app. I started development. I started designing those apps maybe a few years earlier, but just like I didn't have the skills to actually develop them. So I started to develop my apps in around 2020, so 4 years ago.
Okay.
And now I have 5 iOS apps on the App Store.
Okay. So I know Moons. What else is
Yeah,
there?
yes.
What's
Yeah,
your list of?
so my first app that I supposed to be my first app is Numi,
Okay.
expense tracker and budget planner. But because it was so complex and was my first app, I didn't know how to do it. Like I was working on this few years, so uh, when I already had some experience with this, but this app was still not released, my parents during the lockdown, they needed an app to count points for games, like when they were playing card games at home,
Okay.
like during
Yeah,
lockdown.
yeah, yeah.
And in 1 week, I I developed an app, Scoro, for counting a scoreboard app, right? Like a very
Yeah.
simple app. And what's very funny that this app that I made in 1 week, it's still my best selling app, and those other apps that I work on few years, like they are not making as much money as this. But I also have, so I have this those two apps. I have Moons, I have Wins for setting goals,
Okay.
uh, and I have Emo for journaling and for it's like a emotional inventory, like you can write if uh, today you were happy or sad, like what happened, why, like it's some journaling, but like more towards emotions.
Okay.
So yeah, those 5 apps.
So which is your most successful? Is it the scorekeeping one?
Yeah, so far yes, so far
What do you
yes,
think
like
is the
if I
secret behind it? Like why it's funny, you know what I mean? Like what becomes a success and what doesn't?
Yeah, and it's funny because like I remember like when I released first version, some people told me that maybe it's not worth $1, like because it's so simple, it doesn't have many features. But I think because of the simplicity
Yeah.
and just like some nice graphics, some nice UI, and people like it, and just like it's just like it's very easy app. It's not expensive. It's just like a I started it as a $1 one time purchase. Now it's $2, and yeah, and people are still buying. So yeah, I think that there is just like there more um, more people want some app like that. I think that
Yeah.
even though there is a huge competition. Uh, but also I think it's also because of keywords. I think that ASO helped me a lot because after I started to play with ASO and finding better keywords for my app,
Yeah.
it has really a lot of impressions. So yeah.
So we've had Ariel from App Figures on quite a few
Mhm.
times. So we've talked about ASO, and I don't think we've had like a developer on talk about ASO. So maybe you can kind of
Uh-huh.
like give what was the aha moment of ASO where you were like, okay, I get this now. I understand why it's such a powerful tool.
Okay, so I have a very good friend on social media on Twitter. Let me just let me allow me to continue call it Twitter if you don't mind.
I still call it Twitter. It's okay. You're forgiven in
Yeah.
2024.
So I have a very good friend on Twitter that I met him on Twitter. Mateo Spada. He made
Okay.
a Astro, another tool, another app for researching keywords for ASO,
Yep.
and when he was starting to work on this, we talked a lot. I helped him a little with testing and some UX designs a little. And he told me many things about ASO as well, because he was studying this the time,
Yeah.
learning a lot about this, and yeah, so there were many things, right? For example, he told me that he forced me kind of to add keywords to my app title. He said,
Okay.
Kris, it's definitely you need to try this. Without this, you will not make a lot of progress. So after I tried it, and it really worked, right? So, but to be honest, really there were many things. it seems like an easy topic, but there are many things that you can improve about your app. It's not just researching keywords. For example, what I do, and many people don't do it, is that I localize my keywords and I localize my app title and subtitle, right, uh, to many languages, to many as
Okay,
all the
so
languages possible on the App Store
how do
country.
you? So you can go. Like, I totally didn't know this, and I feel stupid. So you can go to App Store Connect and localize that stuff somehow.
Yes,
How
and
does
there
that?
is yes.
Just how does that work? I don't. I feel like I have never seen this in the App Store Connect. How do you? Where
Okay,
do you go for that?
yeah, so you go to first you go to apps, you select your app, right, and like you
Okay.
have the um there are two pages for this, because one is this current version of your
Yep.
app, right, like
Right. And then
there are
app
versions of
information. And
yes,
there's app
yes,
information. Right.
yes, and those things are divided between those two pages. So on one, I think that on one you have keywords, and on another one you have app name and subtitle and app description, right? So in those on those both pages, in the upper right corner, there is this drop down with languages, and by default for most people it's English US. And when you click on this drop down, you can add more languages there. So you can localize your product page, right? Like
Oh my gosh. I see it
yeah,
now.
yeah,
Well, it
and
doesn't. Do you have
yeah,
to do it when you do you have to do it when you upload a new build?
yeah. To do this, you need to upload new build,
Okay.
like a
Wow.
uh-huh.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so because those information like a app title and all those things, that they also need to be approved by the App Store team.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. As I've talked about, I use Fastlane, and now it makes sense because they have different folders for different languages. And yeah, I could just
And
do that, just duplicate it, and then translate it, and then
y-
put that in my
y-
next build. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and definitely do it, because even people that are only focused on USA, right? Which I think is a huge mistake, to be honest,
Yeah.
because like if I look at my downloads and my proceeds, like maybe often USA is like the biggest country that like you know, in my stats, in my proceeds. But when I look at regions, that like I have much more money from Europe. So it's definitely worth doing this. And
How do you pick? Sorry, how do you pick what
yes.
languages? Because it's interesting you're talking about this because I'm looking at with Bushel, the app I just released for Mac OS, and I started looking at okay, what like obviously I just have English. There's some Arabic
Uh-huh.
actually, thankfully through a colleague of mine who helped with that. Um, but then as far as like picking the next language, what how would you recommend? Would you just look at analytics and see where people are downloading it, or because you can't do
Uh,
everything?
yeah. So, but it's a little tricky, because like if you started, if you have only keywords for US, right? So you don't have localized keywords for other countries. So like at this moment, like that your analytics will not be very reliable, right? Like because uh, what I would do is that I would use some ASO tools like Astro, which allow you to check keywords per country, right?
Okay.
So you can research your keywords per each country, and maybe you will find some cool opportunities there, because what I found is
Okay.
very often some keywords in other countries, like I don't know, Netherlands or Sweden or Poland or Germany, right? Like sometimes there are some opportunities, that there are some popular keywords that are not difficult, because not other apps don't use those keywords. right? They
Okay.
don't we say don't optimize for them, but they
Right,
don't use
right.
them in their keywords list.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes total
so
sense.
yeah, and also there's one very big misunderstanding that so many indie developers think like this, that they think that to localize this product page and keywords, they need to localize the app. But those are two completely separate things. So you
Okay, and
can
I
have
think
your
that's where I was getting confused because I was like looking at who's using Bushel and like
Mhm.
that's fine. That's localization of the app itself, but we're talking specifically about the App Store metadata essentially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So those things are completely not related. You can have app only in English, and you can localize for all the languages in the App Store Connect.
Okay. Okay, very cool. Um okay, so is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to ASO? Because I want to jump in and talk about user experience. Because I
um,
don't. Yeah, go ahead.
mhm. Yeah, so like when we were talking, I think before you hit record button, that about
Oh,
diacritic signs, right?
yes, we were.
I told you that
Yeah.
I have one tip for that. I think it's not
Ooh.
very well known because
First
I
of
read
all,
a lot about.
does Polish have diacritic marks?
Yes,
Okay.
few of them.
Yeah, I
Yes.
would say so. Yes.
This is why I know about them, right? uh, so yeah, many people maybe don't know, right? Like because like in English, I think that to to my knowledge, only this word comes from French. I think fiancé, that you are using this like apostrophe above, but even
No.
no, it's not
Yeah.
popular to use it.
Like maybe like the like some Spanish words like El
Uh huh.
Nino, right? They have the
Uh
little
huh.
thing.
So
That's
you
like
are a
maybe
little
it, but otherwise it's very rare that people use
no.
diacritic marks in English.
Yeah, so okay, so I have one tip for you. So like if you aha, and this is also very important. Don't just translate your keywords from English to other languages, because the popularity of them is very different. Like you
Right.
really need to find synonyms, or maybe one keyword, like for example, football in America will be much more
Be
popular than
soccer.
soccer, and soccer,
Right.
right? This is like a very very obvious example, but there are so many others. So but
Well,
if you find
it's the difference between localization and translation, right? It's like there are
exactly
different
exactly
cultural ways of referring to things as opposed to just blatantly like translating a word verbatim. There's like different meaning and connotation to it. So yeah, I get it.
yes, totally. So my tip is that if you find some keywords that have those diacritic signs, right, like those apostrophes, like accents, or some tilde over above
Yep.
the letter or whatever, um, research them, check their popularity with Astro or other ASO tool, but also tell ChatGPT or whatever, uh, take this list of keywords and remove all the diacritic signs. So use only Latin letters, and check this version again, because in some countries people type with those diacritic signs, and sometimes
Some don't.
they type without,
Yeah.
and those popularity scores that we get, which in Astro we have directly from Apple,
Okay.
uh, there are different scores for version with diacritic and without.
Okay.
So like if you don't check both, you will think that maybe this keyword is not popular, but later you will check this other version, and suddenly you will see that, oh, it is very popular. And later you can use whatever you want, because like when people type those keywords, like algorithm will search for both versions, right? Like so you can later you can use whatever you want, but like when you research keywords, research both
Okay.
versions.
Okay. That makes total sense. Okay, so my funny did I say it right? Diacritic mark story.
I think diacritic signs or diacritic letters. I think
Okay.
this is how it's called. At least it's Polish. So yeah,
So I
I
had
hope
set
it's
up
very.
a I'd set up an app to track Switch games, Nintendo Switch games, and there's a very big franchise Nintendo has that has a diacritic mark, and when people were searching for it, it wouldn't show up in the database because in the database it was stored with the diacritic mark. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Can you guess what
Uh,
game or franchise has a diacritic mark in it that people? It's very
can I say
huge.
it loud or not? Or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
You mean about Pokemon? Pokemon or what?
People would
Uh-huh.
search Pokemon and it would never come up because I think in the database it didn't have it, and then, or one or the other. And so I had to figure out, and this was all using Vapor, and I had to figure out a way to like make the data. So there's like case sensitive, case insensitive. There's like diacritic sensitive and diacritic insensitive, or I had to like
Uh-huh.
transform the string or something. And yeah, so yeah, that was my first lesson in
But
computing
but you
and
mean
diacritic marks.
but you mean that they don't show up in the App Store search, or you mean in your database with some
In
other?
my database, in my Postgres
Ah, okay,
database, yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's just FYI, developers
Yeah,
out
yeah.
there, they make a difference.
Yeah, yeah, and even like for example, when you are writing fetch requests and with core data, like there are special flags for this. So like
Right.
if you
Yeah.
don't include them, like those diacritics letters would be less. If even though like in this country alphabetically they should be, for example, letter A with diacritic sign should be right after regular A, right? Like a
Right, right.
English letter.
It's an actual character.
Yes.
It's not like special A. It's like something different. It's called different. Yeah, it's the same with
Yeah.
Spanish and the N. Like we talked about, there's the N and then the N with the mark. Is it? I want to say it's called an enya in Spanish. Totally don't quote me on that. But yeah, they're
Right.
different. They're
I
different
don't know.
letters. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. In Polish, we pronounce them very different. It's
Yep.
not differently. It's not just accent, but like it's really the sound of this letter is different. Yeah, so it's funny how those small things affect our work as a developers, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's, and I kind of envy that because like I've like kids who are learning how to read, and like, oh yeah, C can do this sound, C can also do this sound, and C can also do this sound. And it's like, yeah, you have to teach them that. Whereas like with, at least with a diacritic mark, they can like figure out, oh, how to actually pronounce it. But oh well, English is kind of a mess. So do you want to talk about do you want to talk about, let's talk about Chat GPT.
Okay.
Actually, so I had talked about in the previous episode on Bushel how I use Chat GPT for Bushel, and how
Hmm.
I plugged it in. In the previous episode, Martin was talking about actually, I think he used it for Sprite Kit stuff. I
Hmm.
my whole take with ChatGPT was it was okay for answering some complex programming questions, but where I really found it useful, honestly, it was like marketing, app store metadata, kind of what we just talked about,
Hmm.
things like that. That's where I found it super useful. Um, because like one of the problems as a developer is when you're building an app, it's honestly really hard to think about like the marketing side of that app, right? It's like, okay,
Yes.
I don't know how to describe to someone what my app does. Like I have to figure that.
Yeah.
I've been working in it all day and all night, but now I have to like figure out how to like describe it
Hmm.
for marketing purposes, and it's like I don't and like ChatGPT I found super helpful in that way.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, I agree. I would say that the hardest part of coding is marketing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, so I use ChatGPT for many things. Like I know that many people are skeptical and they have their reasons. Maybe sometimes they use this tool a little differently that I would use it,
Okay.
but I find it super helpful for many things. Like I'm using this for those things that you mentioned too. For example, when I want to write a app description of my app, I
Yeah.
would tell ChatGPT to I'm working on this app. It has those features. Please write a app description for the app store for me. I I would never I never use just like a copy paste and just like a copy and paste all those things that ChatGPT told me for anything, to be honest. Like I because it's very often it's wrong. Sometimes it will guess many things. Like about this app description, right? Like sometimes it will add something in this app description that maybe you don't actually have in the app, right? So
The term is hallucinate, right? Where AI
yes,
just
yes.
makes up stuff that doesn't exist. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I have a sometimes, yeah, I have this joke that I'm using on Twitter sometimes. Like I I call ChatGPTovsky, like some Polish immigrant that I hired as my personal assistant, um, and I treat ChatGPT like this. That this is like for example, like some intern, maybe someone that is very eager to help me, but maybe doesn't have all the experience yet, and it just makes some mistakes, and doesn't have this experience to tell you that he's wrong sometimes, right? Like he's very confident about everything, but very often he's wrong. So I always double check everything that ChatGPT will tell me.
Yeah, for sure.
So for
And I
uh,
think it's a really I like your intern description. Uh because like that's not a bad that's better than nothing. I don't know. I don't mean that in a bad way, but
yeah,
it's like it's a super great like starting point for a lot of stuff.
yes,
Um
yes.
it's definitely ignorant. One of the things I found helpful too is like as far as Bushel is concerned, I have this like I don't know, you like it pages and pages of dialogue. One of the things I was talking about in
Hmm.
that episode was I have pages and pages of dialogue with ChatGPT, teaching it what Bushel does and how it works,
Hmm.
correcting it. Like prompt engineering, I think is the term that's been used lately. Where like now, like it's building up, it's building up the machine. It's machine learning as you talk to it about the app,
Hmm.
so that way it gives better answers. And like I've been
Yeah,
continually feeding it into this big dialogue, I guess, into ChatGPT to teach it, but also to better give it better answers. Like I'll correct it if it says something wrong. Could you remove this? This actually is not a feature, and it'll fix
yes.
it. And yeah, it's a
But
perfect, but it's a hell of a starting point, I think.
but if you start a new chat, it will forget everything, right? So like you need
Right.
to continue
Yep.
in the previous chat.
Yeah, that's exactly what I
Uh,
mean.
yeah. So I'm using this like for writing some marketing. I'm using it for brainstorming, right? Like this is like
Yep.
my coworker, intern, whatever, right? Like that
Yep.
we are brainstorming together. I will tell him like I'm building this app. What keywords would you recommend for ASO, right? Like and it gives me some list of keywords, and I will put them in Astro and check if they're actually popular. Like so sometimes it will give me some keywords that, oh, jackpot, right? Like it was a good idea, but sometimes it's wrong, right? Sometimes those keywords are not popular at all. But it's helpful, right? Like it's just another idea. It's just like another
Yep.
source of ideas.
Yep.
Uh, for and I use it every day, to be honest, for coding. Even I can give you some examples if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. So I'll just tell you, like, as far as coding, there was a lot of hallucinations. What I was getting when I was asking answers or asking questions, a lot of stuff. It would do fairly simple stuff. First of all, its first language is obviously Python because if you ask it to do anything, it gives you Python as an answer. So you have to specify Swift. But as
Hmm.
far as like Swift and like the APIs, I thought it was okay. I think sometimes it does a decent job or it's good starting point, but sometimes it was just like totally off. Like it didn't understand what the API is for or how it works behind the scenes. And that was like a struggle for me where I was just like, I'm giving up on this. And I'm doing maybe if you're doing like Swift UI, like some simple Swift UI type stuff, it's
Uh-huh.
fine. Or something that could be like easily like it's good at patterns. So if it's a pattern of some sort, then it like does decent. Um, yeah, go ahead. What was your experience? I'm curious as far as coding with ChatGPT.
Uh, yeah, one thing I will also add that like I'm also using this for localization. Like I very often this is like
Okay.
my first step when I localize apps, because like I discovered that it's much better than Google Translate. But I'm using some other tools for localization. Like there's very cool website applelocalization.com, and there are like many strings localized that Apple uses. So you can use
Okay.
the same strings that Apple has like in your app. So things like delete, close, like are you sure, or whatever, right? Like those
Yeah, that's really
simple.
useful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And about coding, I I'm using it for many things. For example, I ask it to generate some code, to generate some fetch requests, or if I forgot how to make a computer property that will get me the first or last day of month or week, right? I will tell
That's
ChatGPT to
see,
do it.
yes. Because it's I think it's because it's mathematical. Obviously, I
Uh-huh.
think it's using like Stack Overflow probably for a lot of that stuff, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
mathematical. So that's like if you do it in one language, you could pretty much do it in any language.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that like that makes total sense.
Yeah, so we also need to remember that at least this free version, which I'm using, I'm using this free version. To be honest, so far it's enough
That's
for me.
3.5, right?
Yes, so
Yeah.
so it doesn't have the latest knowledge, right? It's until 2021, I think, some
Okay.
maybe September of 21 or whatever. So you will not ask it about the latest APIs from Apple, right? Because it doesn't know about them. But many things before this that, yeah, as you said about those hallucinations, right? That sometimes it will make up some API that doesn't exist, for example, or some methods in some APIs that they just don't exist, right? Like that your
Right.
code will not compile. But but for me, it's not a showstopper really. Like if I use some code and Xcode will tell me this doesn't exist, I go back to ChatGPT, and on this
Tell
line
it
I got
doesn't
this
exist.
error and how to fix it, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and also there is this it looks like a refresh button that you can have another version, another
Yep.
answer, right? Like
Yep.
it's very easy way to have another. It will show you another way of doing
Yeah. You
something,
could
right?
basically was it regenerate answer or something like that? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So other things is I ask him like how to fix some error, or like I ask him sometimes explain this code to me, right? Because I should say that ChatGPT is not the only tool that I'm using, right? I'm still reading tutorials or books, or watching WWDC videos, or Stack Overflow. I'm still using it, and I use Google, right? Like I use many things, right? Sometimes I will find some code that is supposed to help me, but maybe I don't know everything about it, right? Like there are some new things that I don't know. So I will copy and paste this code to ChatGPT, and I will ask him about some specific things that are new to me. Like so, I will tell him, please explain me what this code is doing, this line, this method, this function, whatever, right? So it's a little like yeah. I started saying that it's an intern, but sometimes it's also like a mentor, a little like a, especially for me that I'm not a professional developer. Like
Right.
so so I like when I want to learn something that I still don't know anything about it, like that there's some new topic for me. I would either need to Google it, read documentation, or if you work with other developers, right, if you have some friends that are more advanced, you could ask them, right? but because I don't want to bother people all the time with my with my newbie questions, I asked ChatGPT, and he has some basic knowledge to explain some new topics to me. So sometimes, yeah, so it's like a mentor that I just don't trust entirely, right? uh, yeah, but I have a very recent use case that 2 days ago, it helped me to fix one bug in my app, because in my app wins that I'm working on a new version that uh, I'm working on a data model migration, right?
Okay.
Uh, and
Now
after this,
you're using core data, correct?
yes,
Okay.
I'm using
Okay.
core data. And for this, there was nothing wrong with the data model migration, but with some function that I use after this. So for example, for this data migration, I just follow chapter in Donny Wall's book, Practical Core Data. It was one of the best books that I bought for coding. Really, it's just wonderful, because there are so many practical examples there. So the data migration went smoothly, but after the migration, when I had in my app, I would have some older objects, that items that, for example, maybe they were not migrated during the migration, the app start, because maybe they were downloaded later from the iCloud, right? And
Mhm.
they would still show in my app. So I wrote a function that would convert those objects. Like they would, for example, copy one value from one property to another.
Yeah.
And my app was crashing, and I didn't know what to do. And I spent few hours fixing this, and ChatGPT helped me. Not at first try, because at first it didn't know what to do, but just I just don't give up when it doesn't help me the first time. I will come back to it and ask it another question.
Yep.
And I tried debugging, and just I found some part of code that, okay, now I'm sure that this part of code, this function is crashing the app. And I told this to ChatGPT, and at this point it suggested an answer that I needed to just add one line of code to wrap my code when I'm saving many items into the context.async or
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
that's because, and I asked it why did it happen, and it told me that it's because that core data code needs to be run executed on one
Main
thread
thread.
all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, on the main thread. And I didn't know it's some complex stuff. It's like a too complex for me,
Have
painter
you
and
jumped
artist.
into? I'm obliged to ask. Have you jumped into Swift Data at all?
Yeah, I tried it, and I think it's very cool. And I tried it for my app Moons. Before I released it, I gave it a try. I migrated my core data stack to Swift Data, but I reverted this because it doesn't have all the features yet that core data has. And
Yes. No, it
one
doesn't.
specific, yeah, one specifically that I needed is it's called uh, section fetch request. I think the correct name of
Okay.
this is that like when you are writing a fetch request, that like for example that you will have a list of items, right? Like in my
Hmm.
Moons app, that for example I have time entries when people work, when they track time. I will have a complete list of this, but I wanted this to have like a divided into groups,
Yeah.
for example per day, right? And you can do this using Swift after you fetch all those items. So you can use Swift data for this, but it's super slow. I didn't know
Okay.
that the difference is so huge. So So I needed to go back to core data because just like the section fetch request in core data is so much faster.
Okay, that makes total sense. Um, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on Swift data. I think I did an episode with Peter Witham on it, so you definitely should check that out on his podcast. I'll post a link to it because yeah, Swift data is interesting. Anyway, all right, go
I,
ahead.
I think it will be really great maybe next year. I hope that like a
Yeah, I
next
think that's it.
version will be.
Yeah, and if you're already having issues with threading, trust me, Swift data is not
Really,
going to
I
make
will
it
have
easier
more.
right now. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about user experience. What the heck is user? Isn't user experience the same thing as user design? I know that's probably the question people ask.
User
User
experience
interface
design, yeah.
design.
Aha, a user interface design. Those are similar topics, and there's a huge misunderstanding. Sometimes uh, I don't know how to talk about it a little because sometimes when people say something negative about UX/UI, that is very popular right now, that they sound like it's gatekeeping, but it's a huge misunderstanding of the topic. UI design, right? It's a part of UX. Sometimes people say, which is not correct, that they say that UI is how the app looks and UX is how it works, which is not correct, because UX is the whole experience, is this user
Okay.
experience. So it's everything that you experience with the app, right?
Right.
Part of it is UI, right? Part of it is user interface and graphics. It's only part of it, right? But there are other things, right? Like what are other things, right? Like a user flow, for example, like how the app is guiding you through that some process. How is it fixing the problem? Does it understand your problem? Some coding things, like some development part, like for example, does it crash or not, right? Like if it if it's crashing a lot, it's not a good user experience, right? Even it's not related to UI design, right?
Okay.
So so UX UX design, user experience design, it's a very broad thing, and UI is just a part of it. So sometimes people are using this like a UX/UI. It's a little like, I would say, like I am a front end / full stack developer, right?
Okay.
It a little doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. So, like, what are some ways of finding out that like you're doing the right thing with user experience? Like, how are you like, okay, like I'm doing this right, this makes sense, or like, you know what I mean?
Yes. So there are many things, and many people focus maybe on this design part. Like the first thing they go is they open Figma and they start to design screens, right?
That's the
But they
fun
should
stuff.
start with, yeah. But they skip research, for example, right? This is a very important thing. Like first, it's very good to understand what you want to build and why, right? Because apps should solve some problems, right? Like this is what we are doing. We are solving problems with software. So
Yeah.
first, we need to identify those problems. Who has those problems? What are those problems? Maybe there are other solutions that solve this problem. What is wrong with those solutions? So maybe you will learn from your potential customers that they are already using some apps. You will learn what is wrong with these apps, what they want from those apps, so you will know what features you should develop, for example, right? Later, when you so you did your research, later you start designing. So now it's more UI design, right? Like you design interface, and it's also UX, that you design user flows. But after you design those things, again, many people skip this part. They don't test it. They look at, okay, I designed something, therefore it's good. but they don't test it. So what I'm doing is that before every release, before every at least first release, right? uh, I test my apps. I invite few people. Many developers, they just use test flight, and they invite people to test flight, right? And they wait for those users' feedback, right? Very often, if you ever use test flight for this, you will know that many times people will just not write back to you, right? Like many people
Right.
just you will find some crashes sometimes, right? Because you will have some crash reports. So this is good, but I'm using TestFlight a little differently. I
Okay.
uh, I invite few people for usability testing that I conduct remotely via FaceTime. So I have a call with them like we have right now.
Hmm.
Uh, I send them link to test flight right before the call. So because I don't know, I don't want that they use the app earlier. And during the call, they share their screen of their iPhone with me on FaceTime. You can also use QuickTime for this. Like that time, you would see a separate window,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
they would share their
Hmm.
screen, and yeah. But
Yeah.
but even without this, you can just use FaceTime with this and screen sharing. This is very convenient. So you will see their screen, and you will hear their voice, and you will see on camera their reactions. So I tell them, I start, this is very important thing, that I tell them that today we will use the app, not you. So like don't worry if you do if something will not work, because this means that there's something wrong with the app, not with you.
Yep.
uh, I look for a few seconds how they are using my app for the first time. When they see it, I tell them, okay, you can just browse a little, and later I have few tasks for them. Like for example, when I tested my app Moons, I
Okay.
had few tasks for people. Like for example, I would tell them that please create this project, please edit this project, please start the timer, please export time entries to the CSV file, right? Like some uh, you also need to be very careful to how you which words are you using in those tasks that you have for people, because we don't want to suggest anything, right? Like
Yeah. You want to be, you
uh-huh.
don't want to be opinionated. You want to be as
Yes,
neutral as possible so that way you can fetch the information out of it. Yep.
exactly. So I sometimes I try to use some more generic words than, for example, words that I have in my UI, because like if I would use the word that I have very clearly in the UI, like
Right.
this would be very clear suggestion for them, and they would try to use some button because I used the name, right?
Yep.
Uh, and later, what's also very important, when you look how they are trying to fix this problem that you just gave them, don't help them too much. Like just observe,
Yeah.
just take
Do you record
notes.
it?
Sometimes, but not very often,
Okay.
because yeah, I just take notes all the time.
Okay.
Like I don't want to make people stressed more because
Yeah.
of this.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so even though many people told me that if I want I can record this, I just took few screenshots, but just like taking notes was enough for me. uh, from like if I work for my clients and we have more uh, advanced usability tests, yeah, sometimes I record that, and I participated in some sessions that were recorded, that were later watched by some UX teams and whatever. Yeah, but for me, no, I prefer simplicity for many things that I'm doing. Just recording would be another complexity here.
How do you recruit people? Because I think that's like one of the hardest things is like I'll have people using my apps, but like good luck. Like I have their email address, but good luck getting them to like
Yeah.
actually be like, yeah, I'll take 15 or half an hour and,
Okay.
sit down with you, because that's what I found really hard.
Okay, so yeah, this is very good question, and a few people ask me about this. So it depends on the app that I'm using, right? Like for this app Scoro, that is like a for broad audience. It's very simple app, like literally anyone can use it, right? It's not a niche app. I tested it with people in my family as well, like so not
Okay.
through FaceTime, but also in real life, which is even better. Like if you have this opportunity to test in real life on real device, it's even better than FaceTime. So I tested this with my brother, with my wife, with my parents who were at that time in Thailand. So my dad and my mom use this app
Yeah.
to count scores. But other people, and especially when your app is more targeted to some specific audience, like for developers, for example, right? So building public helps a lot here, and
Okay.
networking and finding those connections. I very often I invite other indie developers, and like I have this group of friends right now that like I invite them to test my app. When they need something, I will help them. For example,
Yeah.
Matteo that made us show, he helped me to test I think every app that I have. So
That's awesome. Yeah, and that makes sense. We talked in the last episode with Martin about building in public, and yeah, I think that's a big thing, and something I've been doing and hoping to do in 2024 more of is like exposing the little gears
Martin
and things of. Yeah, go ahead.
Martin is another of my friends. He also tested Moons before I
Yeah.
released. Yeah, and even lately we invited him because maybe I will talk briefly about this because I think this is I see a huge value in this. With few of my friends, we made a small group, like I don't know, support group. At first we called it Mastermind, Abstract Mastermind, but now we
Mastermind.
changed
Yeah,
the
yeah.
name. So we have this small group that few of us we have weekly calls every Monday
Okay.
on FaceTime that we just talk. Sometimes we just talk about films or games for a few minutes, right? But very often we talk about our apps, our ideas about code, about marketing, about this. So like this is thanks to build in public. I met all those people through this, through building in public and connecting with people, making those friendships, and this helps me so much. Even though like I use ChatGPT every day to help me with code, but those guys that they are very often my moral support.
Yeah,
They
you're not gonna get that from ChatGPTovsky. Sorry,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not gonna
yeah.
happen.
Yeah, exactly.
ChatGPT doesn't have any experience. Like that's the thing, and like you
Yeah.
can't have real conversation with it. Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about masterminds. I've been in masterminds, and yeah, having somebody to meet every so often just to throw ideas at, and yeah, it's great,
Yeah,
great
it's
thing to do.
very cool, especially when you are with the people that are doing the same as you, right? Like the other developers and people that have the same experience, like they will understand you so much, right? Like
Right,
they yeah, for example, my friends that are just UX designers, sometimes they don't understand some aspects of app business, right? Like I can
right,
talk with them about UX, sure, but there are some aspects that only this group of indie developers will understand because they
right.
went through the same problems.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else before we close out? I feel like we covered quite a bit of stuff. Um, Kris, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been fantastic.
Thank you very much. It was my first time on the podcast. I was super stressed before this. I even wanted to ask you that maybe we can do this in Polish because I was worried about my English.
Your English,
So yeah.
your English is far superior to my Polish, so I think we made the right choice. Kris, where can people find you online?
Uh, in few places, like a few months ago, it would be just Twitter, right? But now it's Twitter and LinkedIn, Mastodon, threads. I have my own website, next-planet.com.
Okay.
And on the App Store too, right? Like if they search for Next Planet on the App Store, they will find my apps. So
Awesome. And we'll put links to all that in the show notes below. So check Kris's stuff out. Awesome person to follow on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and Mastodon and stuff. So yeah. Thank you, Kris. It's been fantastic.
Thank
People
you
can
very
find
much.
me. Yeah, you're welcome. People can find me on Twitter at LeoGDion. My company is Bright Digit. Mastodon at LeoGDion at c.im. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, share with others. I would really appreciate it. And if you're listening to this on a podcast player, I'd love a review. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this episode. And
I really like your podcast. Really, people should subscribe. This is one of my favorite iOS podcasts. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you, Kris. Have a good rest of your week, everybody, and I look forward to talking to you again. Bye. Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Today, I'm joined by Kris Slazinski. Did I say